This is Kat with Beadaholique, and in this video I'm going to be sharing some of my tips for using cultured pearls in your strung jewelry. So I have a half-finished piece up here, so this is what I want to kind of focus on here. Some of the tips that I have, let's go ahead and start out by showcasing the beading wire that you want to use. Now I am using the Beadalon, and the reason I wanted to pull this out is so you guys can see a couple of the things that we're talking about here. So it is a 19 strand, which means you can see that little diagram right there. It's going to show you that there's all those little strands into that coiled beading wire there. So you have a nice flexibility. And this is going to be a 0.15 inch or 38 millimeters. And the reason I want to use this is because it's going to be thin enough to fit through some of those cultured pearl holes. Oftentimes what you'll find that the holes can be a little bit irregular. Sometimes they're a little small. Now you can of course use a pearl awl to drill the hole a little bit deeper or a little wider if you need. But this is a great one because it's small but still very strong. So I recommend this. Now I'm using the gold color for mine here, but this also comes in silver and some other colors as well. So this is from Beadalon. And of course you can get that at beadaholique.com. But I just wanted to kind of showcase one of the designs that I thought would be kind of interesting is to take this strand of multicolored pearls. Now you can see that all the pearls sort of have different shapes. They're really organic. You know, some of them actually look like little drops. You can see that down here. So what I did is I took apart this strand and I strung together a design that I really liked. And that is the result over here. But with only 16 inches of pearls and not exactly the right pattern I wanted, I couldn't continue the pattern with the colored beads here that I wanted. So what I did was I decided to add little metal elements and little crystal elements. So these are little Swarovski crystal rondelles here. I just chose a nice crystal color because as you can see, and I hope you can see this on camera, it's actually picking up a little bit of that gold strand underneath it. So that's why I wanted to go with the gold wire. So that's something to consider as well. If you are going to use gold elements, maybe go with the gold wire. If you're going to use silver, of course, the silver wire. But that way you get a little peek of that gold, just barely through there, just a little touch. But then I'm using these gold round beads here just to kind of add a little bit more glint to that. Just something to kind of play off of the pearls, and these are really natural circles and then the rondelles, so I wanted to use both those shapes with the natural shape of the other pearls. As you can see, there are some that are larger, some that are smaller, some that are a little bit more coin shaped. Now this type of design will work. You don't have to use a multi-strand like this. So I have a couple of other strands of pearls up here. Now this one is a little bit more, they's kind of egg shaped, so you can just sort of see that. You can go with something that's a little bit more of a perfectly round pearl. These ones still have a little bit of organic feel to them. But I love using these coin pearls, so you can also utilize this as well. So these look like little puffed coins, just like so. All right, so you can do anything you want, and I just wanted to kind of bring that together, and now I'm going to show you how to finish it off, and I have a couple little tips for finishing. So in order to finish this off, what I'm going to need is I'm going to need some closed jump rings. So I have the 6mm 18 gauge, and then I have some open jump rings in the 6mm 18 gauge. I have some crimp covers, some crimp tubes, and then of course I have my lobster clasp, and over here these are just some extra of the gold beads that I have there. Those are 4mm. All right, and then for tools, we're just going to need a couple pairs of chain nose pliers, a pair of flush cutters, and I'm going to be using the Xuron 4-in-1 crimpers. So let's go ahead and kind of take a look at what I have happening here at the end of my necklace. Now, if you're curious, this little guy, this is a bead stopper, so this is a great little thing to use. He just sort of keeps everything where it's supposed to be. So I just removed it from one end so you can take a look at the other end. So what you're going to see here is if you can kind of take a look at the crimp cover, you can see that it's going to kind of turn into a little gold ball. So while I had a little gold bead at the end, I'm actually going to remove that because I want to keep that little pattern going. So I'm just going to remove that so that I don't have to worry about it being a gold bead and then a gold crimp tube so that it's not stacked like that. So we're going to kind of cheat it and make that look like it's a little bead. So that's a nice little sort of finishing tip. All right, so very easily, this is the same for basically any strung project. You're going to string on your crimp tube, and then I'm going to be using a closed jump ring, so just go ahead and slide that on. And then I'm just going to loop it back through my crimp tube, kind of pull that up towards the end there. And I want to leave a little bit so that loop and the jump ring kind of have a little bit of room there. So now I'm just going to hold it just like so. I'm going to come in with my Xuron 4-in-1 pliers, and I'm going to give it a little squeeze, crimping it. And now I'm just going to rotate that little crimp 90 degrees so that I really fold it over, just like so. It kind of looks like a little bean or like a little V. So there is my little crimp tube, and I just gave it a little extra squeeze just to make sure it's not going to go anywhere. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to add our crimp cover, and you can use the Xuron 4-in-1s for this because this works like a little chain nose plier. All right, so I have it gripped there, so I'm just going to come in and kind of slide it over my crimp and just make sure that it slides right in there. You might need to kind of guide it with your fingers. There we go. And let me just get that set. All right, so you can see it's just, and then you just kind of close it around. Kind of looks like a little Pac-Man. So now you can just use your pliers to kind of come in and just close that up. And what we're trying to do is just trying to get it to look like a little ball. I know my hands are in the way. I'll show you kind of what the finished result here looks like. All right, so when you're looking at the non-seam side, you can see that it looks very similar to our little gold bead, just like so. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with my flush cutters and I'm going to trim off that little tail there. Perfect. So now what I can do is I can slide all my beads down, and now you can see what we've got here. So you see that we have that nice little finished look, but we've been able to use the crimp tube to do that. All right, so let's head over to our second side here. I'm just going to kind of shift this over. There we go. All right, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to remove that bead because I want that nice sleek design. And I'm going to come in, again, doing the same thing, adding on my crimp tube. But here's where you have an option. So you can use another closed jump ring so that it looks like this one. And then what you'll need to do is you'll add a open jump ring to add on your lobster clasp. So you'll kind of have two jump rings on this side. Alternatively, you can actually go through the loop of the lobster clasp directly, so you can kind of eliminate that step. So it just is kind of how you want it to look on the back of the neck and what your final design aesthetic is. All right, so now we're just looping this back through, and I clearly have a lot more wire on this side, so we're just going to make sure that this goes all the way down through. And another little tip for you guys, if you are creating strung jewelry, and this is just kind of a blanket thing, is what I like to do is I like to try to leave my necklace in the shape that I want it to be so that I don't pull this too snug, because what can happen is those beads can kind of crunch together if you have it stretched out long, and then you end up with a really stiff long piece and it doesn't have that movement you need for it to kind of coil around the neck or the bracelet, excuse me, or the wrist if you're creating a bracelet. So again, I'm leaving a nice little sort of free floating loop there. And I'm going to come in and do the same thing with my Xurons. And we're just going to make a nice little crimp. And do that same little rotation. Do a little extra crimp, a little extra squeeze. And I'm actually going to go ahead and cut this off now since we're a lot closer. Being very careful just to trim that one side. So that is how it looks if you didn't want to add the crimp cover. I just think it looks a little unfinished. This is entirely up to you, but I like the look of the crimp cover, so we're going to do that one more time. All right. So bringing it in, bringing it over. Oops. And I'm going to try to show this from a different angle. So you can see just from here, you bring your pliers in and you can kind of just squeeze that together. And then again, I'm coming in kind of squeezing like down on one side, and then I'll do the same down on the other. And just kind of just work it until it looks a little bit more like a sphere. So there you have that other side there. All right, so let's move back to this side. And this is the one with our closed jump ring already attached to it. So you can absolutely just attach your lobster to this and be done with it, and that's it. Or if you wanted to, this is an opportunity to take some of those open jump rings, and we're just gonna, let me use my other pliers here, better grip, there we go. Just give it a nice little gentle twist, and I can add that on. And I'm also gonna add on another jump ring and close that up. This is kind of how you can cheat and make a little chain extender if you're not quite sure how you want it to look. Now you can also get all the way to the end of your chain extender and add on maybe a little loop or a little extra pearl or a little wrapped loop, something like that, a little dangle, a little crystal. It's entirely up to you. But this is a really easy way just to kind of create a little bit extra length, and you can add on as many as you want. But that's a little tip there. That way you can adjust it so it can fit that last one or down a little bit further. You also have the opportunity to use some of those open jump rings to actually add a length of chain if you'd like, but since you're going to have those open jump rings, why not make use of them and utilize them to make yourself a little chain extender. So that is just some of the tips that I have for stringing a pearl necklace. It's not that different from doing stringing with anything else. I know typically when people think about pearls, they think of knotting, but this just gives you a little bit of an alternative to that method. I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to head over to beadaholique.com to shop all of these supplies and see even more tutorial videos.